Hey everybody, my name is Daryl Abney. I'm going to go over the very first time you open ZBrush, what to do. It's very weird at first. Before we get started, quick plug, my Instagram, instagram.com/artbydabney. You're going to see a lot of stuff. I also have a lot of tutorials on gumroad.com/dabney. So it's going to be something like this when you load it up. It might have a little window with like people's faces and it'll have links to like latest ZBrush stuff. You can close that. But this thing right here is called Lightbox. If you hit comma, it'll go away or it'll come back. So this is kind of cool when you're new to ZBrush if you want to play around with some scenes like um, double click and then if you left click, you've got a dog here. Okay. If you hit comma again, go back to Lightbox. They'll say, would you like to save changes? No, I didn't do anything, so I don't want to save changes. So another thing you can do, as far as viewport navigation goes, so I'm left clicking. If you hold shift, it'll snap. So if you left click, hold shift, it'll snap. If you hold alt, left click and drag, you can move in and out. Left click, snap. Good times. Okay, so alt right click will pan around. And if you're zoomed way in, you can kind of, on this border right here, you can alt click to move back and forth. So a couple things I always change. Interface, you can change your button size and restart, and then your interface will get smaller. You can dock things with this little white arrow. So I'm gonna go interface navigation. I usually turn on right click navigation and I turn off right click pop up. So I don't need this pop up. It's also spacebar will pop out. And so right click navigation means you can right click. So that's something I do. There's also quick save. It's gonna quick save your files. These are really low. I usually crank it up just because I don't want a bunch of quick saves. Screensaver, if you want it on, it's kind of cool. Cam view is this little thumbnail, so you can click that and it'll snap to your views too, which is pretty cool. This little thing shows the silhouette of your model, so if you zoom in, I think it's called thumbnail. I don't really use it, so yeah, you can turn that off there too. And then when you're done, you just hit config, store config. I'm not going to do it, so I don't want to. But also your canvas might come in smaller and you can increase that. But before we do that, first thing everyone does is they screw up and they have a model and then somehow this thing comes up and it's like I'm leaving edit mode. See if it's highlighted, it's on. I could say always switch, and then when I click, it's just dragging a bunch of heads and it's super annoying. So what you want to do is you want to hit T and then Control N. That'll clear the canvas. And now when I left click, I'm actually navigating. So let's say you accidentally screw up again. So the edit mode's gone. Now I'm dragging a bunch of models. Just hit T, Control N, and then F will frame. So there's that. So as far as the document, I'm gonna hit T, Control N just to clear. I'm also gonna dock something over here. There, I'm gonna do this. Don't need materials. You can change your document size. So let's say your screen looks like this. You want to maximize, so it fills out your screen. So depending on it's all going to depend on what size monitor you have. Maybe the height. I'm going to turn off constraint proportions. Maybe the height can be 1100. There we go. And when you're happy with that, you go save as startup doc. And then it's going to remember every time. So you may or may not like having, so much things on your interface. I've kind of got used to it. Kind of having like this. So over here, I'll dock like the brushes. And over here, I tend to dock the tool at first. And that's kind of what gets me going. So let's just start with, let's see, polysphere. So if you hit Shift F, you can see the wireframe. And ZBrush works with subdivision levels, which means if I hit Shift D, I'm going to step down. there's my active points. If I hit D, it's quadrupling the poly count every time. So the more polys you have, the more polygon resolution. So when you sculpt on it, it's going to hold the paint. If I were to just sculpt, so I'm going to hit B, S, and then T for the standard brush. Actually, B, S, G. And right now Symmetry's on, which is fine. So I do some sculpting. Z add means it's going to shoot out, right? Z sub is going to go in. And you can also just hold Alt and it'll do the inverse. So if I hold Alt with Z add, it's going to go in. And if I want to smooth, I'm just going to hit Shift, smooth it. Oh, to make the brush bigger, you hit S and then you just left click. You can also drag this slider. You can find the smooth at first is really strong. What you may do is hold Shift for smooth and then just turn it down. It's kind of something that I do. And so I'm going to dock this transform. Symmetry off, you would just turn off X. X is left to right, so it's like you're throwing something from your left hand to your right hand. Y would be up and down. Z is the other way. I usually just have it on X. So your interface may look a little different. These things will load different layouts. So it's kind of however you want. If you have brushes you use all the time, you can kind of dock them down there. Won't worry about that too much yet. Oh, these are interface colors. So I'm going to go back where I was. I think I was here. I don't like this interface. Let's go with this one. Okay, because it's got all these tools on there. Another thing, if you don't like this gradient, you can turn it off. And if you want to change the color, I'm going to expand this so I can dock the color over here. You can left click back and just drag it over here, so whatever color you want. Let's go with something kind of bright. So there's that. You can just left click to minimize. Yeah. So in the tool palette, we have our spear. We've subdivided. So you can left click here and drag up to get to the higher level, and then there's our poly count right there. So let's make something. All right, so let's see. Transform. We're gonna have X symmetry on. I'm gonna grab again. I like to have the brush docked just so you guys can see what brush I'm using. So I'm on the standard brush. Let's do a happy face. So one thing you'll notice on my brush right now is lazy mouse is on, which is something in the stroke palette. I'm not a big fan of this interface either. Let's try something else. That's better. I've got more room up here. So in the lazy mouse, what is that? So that's in the stroke menu. Modifiers, lazy mouse. So when that's on, Shift F to turn off my wireframe. That's gonna do, it's gonna clean your stroke. So if you have a really long radius, when you click and drag, it's gonna give you like a really smooth. And if you were to L, you can turn it off. Then it's by hand, right? So by hand, it's probably gonna be a little wiggly. But if you're going for like natural, like an organic, like an old person, you're probably gonna have it, you know, by hand kind of thing. So I'm just gonna turn it off for now. Got that right click pop up. I think that's because I changed my interface afterwards. And I always forget where it is. Navigation. Don't want right click pop up. There we go. Cool. So now I can just right click and rotate. So I'm just using Z add with the standard brush to add a little bit strong. I'm just gonna make a little happy monster guy. Some cheekbones. Maybe he's a skull. Just holding Alt to go in. So some of the first brushes you're going to use is like the standard brush, holding Shift to smooth. And then we want to do move brush. There it is right there, or you can hit B and then M. And then you pick the move brush. And usually you want a big radius for this, right? And if you want to step down, you can, at any time you can step down. Shift D to the lower level, D to go up. Sometimes with the move brush, it's better to step down. No idea where this is going. Just trying to show off some tools. Just kind of goofing around. Just move things around. Maybe Shift. I mean, really, the smooth brush is just as much of a sculpting brush as anything else. Go back up. So then I'll go back to my standard brush. Give him a little smile. Move brush. Maybe we'll open the eye socket up. Maybe he's an alien, right? So pull these guys out. So one common thing that happens, you pull something out and you step down, and you notice these are really stretchy. That's just what happens when you stretch a polygon. So eventually, at first it might be fine, but eventually you're going to find it's going to be hard to sculpt on something like this once we start adding details. So there's a cool trick in Zbrush to kind of minimize that, is in the stroke menu, there's something called Sculptris Pro. We need to change our brush to snake hook. So BS. Sculptris Pro only works with certain brushes. So say you want to pull something out, we'll turn it on. And if you hit Shift F, make sure I'm on the snake hook. Okay. Undo that. Oh yeah, so mesh is composed of multiple subdivision levels, so it doesn't work when there's multiple levels like this. So what I'm going to do is step up to the top with D, and I'm going to go to my geometry, actually subtool. I'm looking for something called delete lower, which always moves around on me. Oh, there it is, delete lower. So now I can't step up and down anymore, but that's okay. So snake hook. Make sure I have my Sculptris Pro mode on. There we go. So now you can see it's dynamically tessellating the mesh, so it's adding polys as we go, which is keeping it evenly spaced. Yeah, I did some triangulation, but we're not too worried about that because there's tools in ZBrush that will retopologize your mesh, which means it'll build a new polygon flow underneath. So you can, it's not a totally linear thing. Like you can totally sculpt and then worry about the topology later, because that's, sculpting is the fun part. So I don't always use Sculptris Pro. I mean, sometimes if I'm not really pulling a mesh that much, sometimes I don't even use it, but it's really good for blocking things out at the beginning. So again, I'm using the snake hook brush. Let's give him a neck. It's just really powerful for starting a mesh. We'll do like a bust. As a sculptor, you're going to rotate your views a lot because you need to see all the angles. You can hit Shift, smooth it out. So at this point, I think I'm going to turn Sculptris off. I'll just hold Shift and kind of smooth everybody. Maybe the bottom I want to flatten it out. So I'm going to go B, H polish. Let's make a really big brush. This floor is annoying me, the grid. So you can go into draw and you can turn off floor. So if you just, with the H polish, you can flatten things. This is kind of a funny, what I may do, if you hold Control and left click, you can drag a mask. So a mask is kind of like freezing something. So if you definitely don't want to touch an area, you'll mask it. If you hit Control left click, you can blur the mask. So yeah. We don't have to be perfect. Just trying to oh yeah, Control Shift A clears the mask. It's also in Tool Masking Clear. You can do all kinds of things with a mask. So you can blur it, you can sharpen it, you can shrink it. Sometimes I'll sharpen and grow, just to use it to kind of grow the mask. So now you know the horns are locked off. You can invert it. Maybe I'll shrink it a little. And we can use our move tool to kind of move these around without hurting the head underneath it. So don't know what this is. So masking is super powerful. Another thing you can do, I'm gonna hit Control D just to get some more resolution. There's a cool brush. Let me hit B, D, Damien Standard. It's gonna be kind of a knife brush. So you can use this to carve in. If you hold Alt, you can kind of get sharpness too. So maybe he's got some kind of ear thing. Maybe we'll use our flatten brush. Totally just making this up as I go, so. Get some forehead wrinkles. Definitely looks a little odd because he doesn't have eyes, so we're going to get him some eyes soon. Just carving in some shapes. Just have fun with your first sculpt. I mean, I would say, if you're new to ZBrush, just make a couple throwaway sculpts, just on a sphere. That's what I would do. So BC Clay Buildup is another kind of go-to brush. So I will hold Alt. Kind of carve in some ears. Maybe he's an elf alien or something. Okay. Clay Buildup's pretty smart brush. It'll try to add clay where you need it, It's kind of magical. I can't really say exactly how it works, but it's just an all-around awesome brush for sculpting. So at this point, maybe I'll do a little smoothing. You don't have to manually smooth. Like sometimes when you just add a subdivision level, it'll kind of automatically smooth for you. So I need some eyes. So at this point, there's a couple different ways you can do it. I'm going to go with an insert multi-mesh brush. So to hit BI, there's IMM primitives. We're going to go sphere. I'm just going to left click. So it's complaining again with multiple subdivision levels. It doesn't like to have multiple levels. So I'm going to delete lower. Now I can drag some eyes out. They're not where I want them. They're pretty goofy. So I'm going to hit W for the gimbal, the transpose. And they're kind of, this gimbal's kind of weird. Whoop. Let me undo. Okay, it's the undo slider. I'm gonna hold Alt. I'm gonna hit left click this and this to reset the gimbal, and then just put him back in the head. Something like that. Okay, and I'm gonna hit Control and left click just to invert the mask. Now we can kind of move our eyes around it. Do I want to make him evil? Nah, he'll be happy. So at this point, if we look at subtools where all your models live, it's actually made this kind of one into one mesh because they use that insert multi-mesh, so we can do a split unmask points. So now we've got two objects now, which is kind of cool. Another cool thing is this solo button. Whatever you have clicked, it'll just look at that. You can also move your tool up to the top. I kind of like to do that. I'm going to add some divisions to the eyes, and I'll go back to the standard brush and the stroke. I'll go drag rect, and I'll change my alpha, right? So all the brushes have different alphas. Love that over there. So clay buildup, move brush doesn't really have one. Damp standard has a different alpha. Yeah, so basically with the standard brush, here he is. I'm just gonna pick an alpha kind of like for an eyeball. I don't know. Let's see what this does. We'll do Z sub. We need a lot more intensity. That's funny. I'll go. Maybe just something really simple. Alpha 12. Yeah. If you hit G, it'll redo your last stroke, so you can kind of make it extra hard. Eyes are kind of spread out, but yeah. So if you alt click, you can jump to different subtools too. So it's the same thing as going in here and clicking, but a little bit faster. So we hit Control D. You're just feeling really lumpy. So I'm going to do some smoothing. Sometimes if you shift D to go down to lower levels, it's easier to smooth it on the lower levels. I'm losing the forehead wrinkles, but that's okay. The ears, I can pinch them. BP. And I think I've got it. Wait. BP. There it is, right in front of me. Okay. So you can pinch things. Be careful that you don't over pinch. Say it's one of the more dangerous brushes as far as getting you into trouble with topology. So if you're tired of looking at your guy in this gray, you can change your materials. I'll dock this. It might come in like this. A lot of people, when they start ZBrush, it's red. I find that kind of hard to look at. Yeah, that's kind of cool. Yeah, just play with the materials. I'm going to go back to the clay buildup. BC. I have all these kind of custom keyed. That's why I don't really use the B and then hitting the thing that much. But since this is a beginner tutorial, I'm going to show you how to do that. I think it's good to learn the default way first. All right. Maybe he's got a big snout. Cool. We'll go back to the Damien standard. And then click buildup. Carve in a mouth. Oh, autosave. That's why I increased the time on the quick save, so I'm not constantly waiting for these autosaves. Wow, this guy's looking funny. Damien standard. course, you can use reference and do a much better job than I'm doing right now. I'm just going for it. Clay tubes is another one that's kind of good. I do prefer clay buildup, but if you want like that really loose feeling, you can hit it with the clay tubes. It'll give you that almost like it's a sculpture, like out of clay. Of course, at some point you're going to want to turn off your symmetry, right? I've got symmetry on. Everything's going to look very CG if you have symmetry on. Let's give them some kind of detail. You can do BM, move to topological. And it's kind of a smarter move brush. It's going to just grab the area you click on. And it's going to try not to grab. Like it'll grab the upper lip but not the lower. You just kind of have to play with it. So I use a lot of move brush, masking, clay buildup, and those are the main ones. A little bit of pinch, but again, be careful with the pinch. I've warned you. This guy needs some teeth or something. I could be really lazy. We don't have time for teeth, so I'll just close the mouth. Lazy or smart. Let's see. And then clay buildup. You need some lips. There we go. A little bit of lips. Starting to look like something. Everybody wants to see the super cool alphas and all that. I'd say that's kind of the least important part of the sculpt, with like the final little pore details. I mean, they're definitely important, but you don't want to jump to that stuff too soon. Just using the damn standard. Carve in some stuff. Maybe he's got some little ear gills or something. Maybe they continue down. You can also use the gimbal. So yeah, if you hit P, it's perspective on and off. And it's based off whatever camera you pick here. 85 is a pretty good one. This is going to be really fisheye. This is going to be like a GoPro. So I think 85 is pretty good. Or you can turn it off. I think it helps to have a little bit of perspective on though. So yeah, so let's just say we want to add some pores or something like that. So now it's 1.9. Again, this is very simple model, but we can do standard brush, drag rect, alpha. Let's use some default stuff for now. Alpha 8. That's way too strong. And it's a little soft. You can actually give it some contrast. So I'm just gonna say like 3. And you know, you can drag it out. That's one way to do it, to get like kind of cool. Of course, you know, it's very symmetrical. You can hit X to turn off your symmetry if you want to. Something like that. You can also change your stroke. So you can go to spray. I always like to test things on the back. You can also do this. There's layers. geometry layers, just hit that. So we got a new layer. Details. I probably should have done that before I did all this stuff, but yeah. So yeah, with the spray stroke, you can kind of just spray it on. So that's giving you some cool lumps really fast. Almost like he took an orange peel or something and applied it to his head. But like I said, you don't want to do this stuff until you have a good looking sculpture. And my sculpture is, I'd probably work on this for like another hour for sure before I do any kind of details, but just wanted to show you how to do this. Then of course, since it's on a layer, I can hit turn off record and I can turn it off if I want, or I can turn it to like 0.1, so it's just barely there, back to 1, or I can go crazy, I can go 2 and make it extra strong. And I'll make a new layer. Maybe I'll change the alpha just to these dots. Just get some kind of cheek pores. And I would think the pores would be bigger in the nose area, so I'll just make my stroke bigger. So yeah, so say you got something you're pretty happy with, and the viewport looks good, but you want to do a render, right? So we're gonna go into render, and this is best, which is a quick thing, but I hardly ever use it anymore. Usually leave it on preview. I'm gonna do BPR. Right, it's actually in the menu. So first time you hit it, it's really harsh shadows. I'm gonna dock the light. This is your light source. So if we go over there, we hit BPR. Shift R is the hotkey. So the sun's here, shadows are cast there. That might be cool. We're gonna go to the shadow. If you up the angle, it's gonna blur the shadow more. So we'll try 30. It's blurred. It's still banding. You see that? So what we can do is up this to like 32. And it's a lot better. It's super harsh light, so I'm gonna turn the strength down of the shadows, like 0.6. And that's much better. So a lot of it also depends on the material you pick, right? So you might want to try like skin. I kind of like the... Where'd it go? Skin shade. It's probably right in front of me. I don't see it. Well, there's a lot you gotta play with. Let's do skin 5. It's pretty cool. Not in love with that material. Green clay. That's pretty cool. I'm gonna change my dock so there's no gradient, and I can just darken the background, maybe like there. That's pretty cool. And again, I think the shadows could be darker now. So we're gonna go back in 0.8. Maybe I'll move my light source. Up. Takes a lot of playing around. I think that's pretty cool. We're gonna turn on a couple more settings. I like smooth normals and I like ambient occlusion. The occlusion is always too strong, so let's just go 0.7. It's gonna give you more shadows where two surfaces meet. I think that's better. I'll do less blur. Sometimes it kind of wigs out, so let's just try it again. There we go. Yeah, I think that's pretty cool for your first little alien. Just play around with the tools, and hopefully this gave you enough just to get started and make your first sculpture. All right, good luck.